the night of season finale. Devindra, how are you
It's
doing
the
tonight?
night of finale, Dave. You
That's
missed a
right.
golden opportunity
Missed
there.
the golden opportunity. How are you doing today, Devindra?
Doing good.
So we have just finished watching the season finale, The Night of, on HBO. So far, I'm not aware of any second season that's been announced for it, but it's very possible that there will be.
Yeah.
And like literally 10 minutes ago, just finished watching it. And so we're hopping on. I'm broadcasting live on YouTube right now. We're going to put this up on the /filmcast later and talk a little bit about what our thoughts were on this series. Now, Devindra, you and I were both really taken with this series when it started. And I still maintain the first 3 episodes, some of the best procedural filmmaking, quote unquote, that I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say I think you were a little stronger on it than I was. Like I was seeing cracks in the facade, even from the beginning. But it was definitely better early on.
Let's talk first about what the show does really well, okay? And I want to mention a few things, in my opinion, that I really liked about The Night of. Number one, and we should say actually before we begin that you can find more episodes of our podcast at /filmcast.com. You can also email us at /filmcast@gmail.com. And we're actually going to take call-ins today. Not yet. I'll let you guys know when to call in, but you'll be able to call in at 781-583-1993 and share your thoughts on The Night of season finale. So looking forward to hearing what our listeners think about it. But anyway, we are going to spoil everything through the first season of The Night of. So if you don't want to be spoiled, then you should stop listening right now. So spoilers, beware. Let's talk about the show. Something I think the show did really well is that, firstly, it's a gorgeous show, right? Like, very beautifully shot. The cinematography is tremendous. Like, my mind boggles trying to think of how many camera setups they used in this show. It felt like there was a new shot like every 20 seconds, and that it seemed like it must have been meticulously storyboarded in order to achieve the look they had. And so there's very few shows that look better on television, and that's one thing that just right off the bat is immediately obvious. Second thing I really liked about the show, at least the first few episodes seemed really focused on process and on like all the steps that you don't see on Law and Order. What happens after the perp leaves the courtroom? What happens when they go to prison? What happens in between all these steps that we normally see on a procedural show? The Night of seemed to show us those things in the first few episodes. It lost that more and more as the season went on, and that's where I think the show kind of went wrong. And then finally, I mean, there's many other things to praise about it, but I'll toss it to you after I mention this last thing, Devindra, which is just that I think it really helped show the human side of the criminal justice system. Like it or not, there was a very human element to the lawyer's eczema. There's a very human element to like these cops who have been on their shift for 15 hours and they just want to get off the shift. You know what I mean? Like it shows you that these are human beings that are causing this justice system to just keep grinding forward. It's not just like impersonal, and I mean it is very impersonal, but it is not just like a machine that is operated automatically. That there are human beings with their own wants and desires that are helping to make this trial happen. And that's something that we don't often see in shows like Law and Order, which is one of my favorite shows of all time, but is like kind of an iconic series for what it was able to do for the procedural genre. So those are just a few things that I really appreciated about The Night of. Devindra, what did you like about The Night of?
As you said, like when it started, there seemed to be a lot of potential here to do something kind of different with a procedural drama. And I also really liked Riz Ahmed. I like the fact that it focused on this kid, an actor that I really liked, and that I like that he's showing up in more things now. But also focusing on how this is affecting him and his family, and the fact that he's Muslim, and how in a climate today, how somebody who's Muslim like him could could be dealing with a lot of injustice happening all at the same time. And John Turturro's performance I really enjoyed. And yeah, it's just a beautiful show. But even early on, I felt like everything you're talking about, all those setups, almost felt too meticulous. It almost felt like it was trying really, really hard to show us like how polished it is and how stylish it is. And that's the sort of thing where, you do it to a point and it's fine and I really enjoy it. Some you can easily go overboard with some of that stuff, and I know then it starts to feel distracting. And I started to feel that early on too, especially when the camera would just linger on things that would be important later on.
Yeah,
it wasn't very subtle about anything like that.
It wasn't very subtle as a show in general, and I agree that some of the filmmaking felt "quote unquote" over-directed. Beyond that, there were also problems of like so many red herrings thrown in there about like who might have done the crime, and ultimately, I think where the night of went wrong is it started by transcending the genre and then ended up simply becoming a fairly generic entry into the genre.
Sure. And there were honestly a very melodramatic one too. Like,
right.
It's weird how it went from being this high-minded pursuit to something that I know had a lot of weird plot twists and really dumb things happening, like really dumb motivations.
Agreed.
I think what annoyed me the most is how the show just lost focus from Nas and the trial itself, and even his family. Like what his family went through was kind of glossed over. And instead we spent a lot of freaking time on the eczema. And then also time on John Turturro may or may not be adopting this cat, which I love how that was paid off, like the very tail end of the finale.
The very tail end of the finale. Anyway, you reference a couple of other things that I think the show does very well, which is like I appreciated what the show was trying to do with regards to Nas in jail. It's trying to show you that you can take a completely innocent person, put them in prison, and that they will come out a criminal. Like I get that what the show's trying to do. I don't think it did it in a particularly subtle way, but I thought that overall it was fine. I would give it a C in terms of how well it did.
I don't know, man.
Element.
It got cartoonish.
It got pretty cartoonish. Cartoonish, yeah.
I think the bigger problem is, you talked about this on Twitter, is like, the show is terrible about telling us how much time has passed between episodes, sometimes even between scenes. It's really unclear how we're moving through time in the show. And so, in one episode, Nas can be like a scared kid in prison, and the other, he's getting tattooed Sinbad on his hands, which that's really going to help you in your trial of attempted murder or of murder. A lot of dumb things like that. Like it seemed like he trusted every single person he talked to in prison. And it was only the point where he started talking to Freddie, right? Where I think like a lot of this stuff started to get worse, but that also escalated so damn quickly. Like the drug use, the tattoos and everything.
It escalated quickly from an episode-to-episode basis. I think the first few episodes of the show felt like every episode was a day. And then as you got to episodes 4, 5, and 6, you're jumping like months at a time. And so the show didn't do a very good job of conveying that passage of time, and I think it went really wrong there, because those time jumps really cost in terms of character motivation and development. And
give me some chyrons, give me something, give me a newspaper. You can be it's so blunt about everything it's trying to say when it comes to symbolism. Like I don't even know what it's really trying to say about the eczema, but the cat, like there's a lot of like forced imagery in the show, and instead of giving us the narrative imagery that we actually need. What time is it, or how much time has passed? How is Nas dealing with this kind of in between the big scary moments? How is his family dealing with it, other than, not being able to afford the car anymore, the taxi, and his father having to deal with that? It's sad that the show kind of lost sight of all of that.
Yeah, I think the impact on his family, like you said, they did really well. And the problem is that they invested so much time in the eczema thing. Now, the eczema thing is clearly meant to be an allegory for the criminal justice system, right?
Is it? I don't know.
It's this idea. Sure. It certainly comes into play in the final moments of the season finale.
It really does.
But the idea that there's this thing that's like this intractable illness that a lot of people are weighing in on with their expertise, and everyone thinks they know what the answer is, and no one really has an answer, and no matter what you do, you can't get rid of the problems that you're dealing with. It's a metaphor for the justice system. It's a very overwrought metaphor, and I think you only really earn the ability to extend that allegory in the way the show did if you are firing on all cylinders with every other element of the show, which it was not,
And also, if you're saying it wasn't always saying something new or interesting, like it seemed like it kept making the same points over and over with the eczema thing, rather than trying to flesh out what that it really means or what it means to John Turturro or what it means to the justice system. I heard on the original British version of this show, it was just kind of like a quick thing, like, oh, by the way, this lawyer has eczema. Doesn't that humanize him a little? But they didn't focus on it like this.
They focused on it so intensely, and it's gross. It's just not pleasant to watch or consider.
I don't care about that. It is one of those things. Like I actually kind of like the idea that just somebody dealing with like a skin disease that is normal and not very Hollywood. I'm fine with that. And seeing that stuff portrayed is actually kind of interesting to me. But there's so much else going on in this show, right?
Exactly.
This is a show about the murder of a young girl, and so much else floating around. But let me tell you, like, Dave, where this show really lost me, the minute where they're walking up to a townhouse in the Upper West Side, nobody asks, like, how the hell does a young 20-something girl, how is this her house? And it's not until like episode 5, I think.
It's not until like the trial is like
6.
well underway.
Yeah,
that they're like, wait,
like,
she has this massive house that maybe someone might be motivated to try and obtain from her.
And neither the lawyers or the cops asked that question. Nobody was really asking questions of motivation. And I guess part of the message there is that, oh, they were just so dead set on Nas that they didn't really look at anybody else. But it is kind of hilarious. Like, it's not just... It's just bad police work, but it also seems like bad writing. Like, oh, they conveniently notice all this stuff, just to push the plot along. Maybe if they had recognized this earlier, they would have found this other dude that's revealed in this episode. They would have found him in the first episode.
I'm a little bit more forgiving of that than you are, simply because, I mean, there was... As you see in the pilot, there was just loads of circumstantial and DNA evidence.
I guess.
If you were a person who's just doing a job and, AKA a detective, and by the way, that was one of the biggest disappointments. I would say, like, Detective Box. I feel like whenever you're doing stuff on the eczema, you're taking away from character development. And I thought that like Box would be a much bigger character through the course of the show.
Still he'd be more interesting. Yeah.
Still very great actor. Great performance in the show. But it's just like, oh man, there was so much potential there for kind of this. I felt like it was a setup between like Detective Box and Nas's defense lawyer, and like this is going to be like a clash of the titans kind of thing, and that never just came to pass.
I think the show kind of oversold Detective Box's abilities, I guess, because early on it did seem like he was the guy. He was the dude, the master detective, walking in to solve everything. And like everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, is that the most obvious thing?
The most amazing detective on the And so everyone was talking about it in hushed tones. I agree, it was not really well done. I do think that Detective Box did a great job with the performance, but
Bill Camp,
Bill Camp did a great job.
Box,
and it kind of ended up with Jeannie Berlin was the DA at the end. She was phenomenal as well. A lot of great performances in the show. That's certainly not a problem.
Yeah.
But you have this, like you said, the prison stuff I found to be incredibly cartoonish.
Yes.
Freddy being this kind of omnipotent.
He's a fairy. He's like a fairy. He's basically the
fairy godfather.
Fairy godfather, but also like the very fairy Negro jail godfather too. Like there's a lot of cliches going on in this character, and then maybe some things will be revealed in the second season. Like he'll probably call in if we actually do get to see what happens to Nas, and maybe he'll start calling in favors or something. But right now, what was his motivation? What was good? He just wanted a smart kid to play chess with.
And help him smuggle drugs in, apparently.
Yeah, that's useful,
firstly, if a second season happens, it would likely be a completely different set of characters, from what I understand. True Detective season 2 style is my understanding of how it might go down. But also the idea that, firstly, there was also that other random character that started helping Nas before tossing boiling hot baby oil on him. And I was reading a recap of that show that actually thought that character was made up in Nas's head because of how out of the rest of the show, like how that character seemed to come from an entirely different show. Like, why would this random character help him and then suddenly turn on him at the end? Makes no sense. And so that stuff was ridiculous. And then the idea that there's like these 3 suspects that just happen to have motive, and opportunity the night of the murder felt very convenient. And then, of course, the final episode, we find out it's not none of those suspects.
Of course.
In classic Law and Order TV final twist fashion.
My God, if we asked the most basic questions about this case, we would have found this guy earlier.
Again, I'm more forgiving on that point, but I do think, it's a little
You're
bit...
really forgiving, Dave. Like, did you... Maybe it's because you haven't... somebody who lives in New York and is also, like, trying to find... eventually buy a place or something, which is impossible in the city. But look at that house. Look at that street. That neighborhood. That is one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world. Well, and this young girl is like living there. Like there are basically questions that they didn't ask. It's not even like, oh, let's look into her financial statements. They didn't ask who could really benefit from her murder. They sort of glossed over the stepfather and everything, but they didn't ask that about Nas.
Let's ask this question to you, and then I want to talk about the finale a bit, and then let's bring on some callers. How did you feel the show captured New York? Like, I've been to New York a few times. I thought it did a pretty good job of capturing the environment and like the courthouses look run down and like
they did.
Look
sometimes
lived in.
Sometimes they used exteriors from courthouses in Brooklyn. I know because I've had to like walk through some for jury duty and whatever. So like even if the locations aren't exactly right, it feels like New York. They clearly shot here. And that's something that was totally missing from like the Ghostbusters reboot, which felt nothing like New York. So it had the look of New York, and it definitely had the feel of it too. And a lot of the accents, or like John Turturro knows how to do a New York accent pretty well.
Yeah.
I really would have liked to see Gandolfini in that role, and that is truly sad to me. Like apparently they did shoot the pilot scenes. And I wonder if we'll ever see that, if in special features or something.
There is a scene in the finale. Like in general, I agree with you. I would have loved to see Gandolfini in this show. He would have played the defense lawyer role that John Turturro plays. Mm-hmm. There is a scene in the finale where he kind of roughs up the victim's stepfather.
Yeah.
And I feel like that just would have played so differently with James Gandolfini, because James Gandolfini is a legitimately threatening character.
Well, we've seen him be a threatening dude for so long on TV, and we've seen John Turturro like be like he can be threatening, but
not in this.
He's much more of a goofy person.
Yeah, and I think I don't know about goofy, but he's just a weaker. Like physically less imposing.
Also, that is a really smart thing to do with a potential witness.
Oh yeah, totally. Like, just rough him up and hope that nothing goes wrong.
Oh my God, the other lawyer too. What's her name? Chandra, played by Amara Karan.
Yeah.
I actually liked her performance, but what they wrote, like eventually, I guess I'm in love with him now. I guess I'm gonna start smuggling drugs to this guy.
Yeah. I mean, did you buy any of that?
No.
It's ridiculous.
I wish they had at least set some of it up, or at least some sort of romantic tension, but not like acting on it, not going to the drug route, because my God, not only does that ruins your case, that ruins the career, that sends him to jail for whoever knows how long. Like so many stupid decisions for a character they otherwise painted as like smart and competent. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I jumped off the train of the show's believability when she made out with him in the cell.
Yep.
And then this week when she goes to do the drug buy for him, I'm just like, this has become, like freaking CSI Miami at this point. Like it's not, it's gone from being like the most gritty, realistic procedural to being ridiculous.
I have to say, I appreciate, like, I know what you're saying about it being. See, it seemed really different early on, but we've also seen a lot of this material covered in other shows, right? We've seen Oz, we've seen The Wire, we've seen, even in The Killing, a show which people also got pissed off about, especially about the finale. I think The Killing did a much better job of like conveying the work of the case and how the family felt. Like, oh my God, the first couple episodes of The Killing, just seeing the family deal with that loss and that heartbreak. It is one of the most emotionally wrenching things I've ever seen. Like, there are just some great performances in that show. And I think I just preferred the style in that show too, because it was a lot more subtle. It wasn't trying as hard as this one. So that's just saying, like, I appreciate what the show tried to do, but at the same time, like, I don't even think it was as groundbreaking as maybe we thought it was earlier on.
I agree completely. I think the ending of the show, this season finale, was fine. It wasn't horrible. I think it's cool that we got closure on a lot of things. Nas gets out of jail. I mean, I don't know if I quite bought the idea that the trial would have ended in mistrial. like
Yeah.
6x6 deadlock. Because me as an individual watching the trial, it just seemed like when he was on the stand, like
Yeah.
the DA obliterated him. It's
Yeah.
just like, whoa, she just laid waste to him. And then I think the idea is like we're supposed to believe that John Turturro's closing statement was so good that it was able to like undo all the damage that was done by putting him on the stand.
Yeah.
And I just did not believe that at all.
And there,
I mean,
it annoyed me too. Like there were just so many arguments that John Turturro and the other lawyer, like, and Chandra, like they just didn't make. You know, the idea that yes, maybe if it would actually would have been easier for Nas to just make up a story for that missing time rather than just saying like, oh, I was blacked out from the massive amounts of drugs in my system, like, which is believable and which medical test proves. Like, hey, if I went to get out of this, I could say anything right now. So all that stuff was just super annoying.
But I like the idea that Nas got, like, even though I didn't believe at all that it would end in mistrial, I like the idea that there's some closure, but that Nas is changed. Like his family's never going to be the same. He's never going to be the same. He's still addicted to drugs, and I did.
If anything, this show proved like the justice system, or at least the mishandling of it, can ruin lives easily.
Yeah, for sure. And that's to the show's credit, that it kind of takes you through the steps of like how a person could easily be wrongly convicted if things went, in a certain direction.
But
there's a great moment in the season finale when Box presents to her all the evidence, and she's like, "We have more on Nas. We have more on the other kid." And it's just like it's completely amoral. It's like, hey, I don't even care who did it. We have more evidence on this person, so we should just, convict this person. And I
sort of hated that scene too because
I like that scene. I think it was a great demonstration of that these are people just caught up in this system. It's very Wire-esque in terms of how
it's a great scene. I wish I believed it more from the other lawyer, right? Because I think she was at least presented as somebody who's like, she had like this great nervous tick to her into her voice that was really just interesting. But she also seemed like somebody who, like, everybody thought what they were doing was right. They were doing it because she really believed Nas did this thing, and they had all this evidence, and her job was to convict him. And like, I don't know, I guess maybe somewhere like, okay, I can also believe that she's going to be that amoral as well, even though there's clearly another. It's a whole other level, right? It's one level to like lie a little bit about the evidence or his motivation. It's another to completely disregard somebody who may actually have done it and send this innocent person to jail for who knows how long.
Let's just say I completely disagree with you on this point. And just that I think like if I was in that situation, when she says we have more evidence on the kid, she's not just saying a practical statement of like we can more easily convict this person. I think part of it is also potentially that like she doesn't know what the real answer is,
right?
And maybe the fact that she has more evidence on the kid means the kid did it. So I don't agree. I think like that was a great moment in the show that showed what the show is trying to do. Yeah. And so we agree to disagree on that one. But overall, I thought the finale was fine. Like all the red herrings were proven to be red herrings, and the person who we thought did it didn't do it, and it was
my god, yeah,
it was shocking twist, blah blah blah.
Anyway, I guess nothing. It was unsurprising. It was, I guess, surprising to me in how unsurprising it was. Right, like it was very textbook. Yeah, everything they showed us. Oh, and we get another shot of shoes trying to mean something. What did it mean? Her changing her, fancy court shoes to sneakers.
It means that she's leaving behind her professional persona. She's a different person when she's
going to be a normal person again. She's wearing sneakers.
Joshua Grohl in the chat room makes a really good point. Helen's decision not to try the case again, I think, was her admission that she was having doubts. I really love that moment. That was awesome moment when they're like, how do you want to proceed? And she turns to them, and then the entire defense table turns towards her, and if they're just hanging, all these people just hanging on what this person can decide at a whim. At a complete whim of whatever. Maybe she ate a bad lunch that day and she makes a different decision, Anyway, so a lot of great moments in the finale, a lot of stupid moments too, with all these red herrings being dismissed that we were wasting time on anyway. I would have loved more time with Detective Box. I would have loved more time with Nazir's family. I did like the element of like the cab and how he's struggling and how he had ruined his family's life with the stealing of the cab and stuff. Wish there had been more about the family dynamics. So overall, I'd say The Night Of was a mixed bag. Does some things really well, does some things really crappily. But I'm still glad that the show was made, and it seems to be something that has captured the zeitgeist. Would love to hear from our listeners who are tuning in right now. You can dial us at 781-583-1993. Again, that's 781-583-1993. And we'd love to hear what you guys have to say about the season finale of The Night Of. So feel free to call in starting right now. So, Devindra, do you notice that this show borrowed from some soundtracks throughout its many episodes? There was like usage of, some people were saying, like the Being John Malkovich score, I said it was, or the Man Who Wasn't There. Those scores are very similar. The penultimate episode used themes very similar to that. The season finale used a track from The Door and the Floor, which is a beautiful score that was used in the trailer for Never Let Me Go. I thought the musical choices overall were pretty good. You a fan? Did you?
It's fine. I don't remember any of them specifically. Like that's, I guess in a show like this, like sometimes the use of music and how it's tied together with the imagery would be more memorable. And I'm surprised like none of that really clicked with me even early on.
What did you think of the cat, by the way? Firstly,
the cat is very important.
The final. So I actually thought that the cat would end up being crucial to the case somehow.
I've read a lot of that in reviews.
Like there'd be some evidence, like the cat had some like
you guys
fibers.
were holding out so much hope for that cat.
The cat had some kind of fibers on it or whatever that.
And a microchip.
Yeah, it had something in it that would like reveal that Nas was innocent.
Yeah.
So that was.
I enjoy cats. I enjoy seeing stories about cats. I have 2 cats. I think the point where we saw the ASPCA commercial in the finale, just it killed me because it was so funny. And maybe the show, I don't even know if the show they knew like that would be like a little self-referential thing. It seemed
well. What was hilarious
ridiculous
about that was that they show the SPCA commercial, and you're like, oh, well, now he's gonna go get the cat. But nope, the cat has already been there the entire time.
Oh, you outsmarted me the night of.
Yeah, you kind of summed up the entire show like, oh wow, you really tricked me there in a way that felt completely unnecessary. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's
I think the cat. By the way, one thing they didn't mention is I actually think the cat was the reason his eczema went away. And I was actually trying to figure out what the meaning of that could be. Like this thing that could kill you, but in some other ways is helping you and is saving you. Because I think there are studies about like allergies affecting other allergies and how our bodies deal with that. It's funny, like, the show never mentioned that at all. But yeah, that's kind of how I'm reading all of that, because his eczema didn't just go away with the weird herbal medicine stuff. It really went away when he brought in the cat. And that's the mystery I'm trying to figure out, Dave. The eczema.
The show still has you hooked on solving the eczema question, which I understand. It spent so much time on it that is completely understandable. Also focused on his erectile dysfunction as well, which I know is one of your favorite plot lines.
It was really good. It's just what we needed.
I was terrified that Freddy would do something crazy to keep Nas in prison at the end there, because he had just given some huge talk about how he really valued Nas and why he wanted him there. So I was like on the edge of my seat for that entire sequence. But fortunately, Nas got home okay, and apparently is free to leave the house whenever he wants, because his parents have learned nothing from that. So,
oh man, it kills me that I don't know how much time do you think went on in this entire
probably a year is my guess.
A year, 6 months, something like that. A long time. There were issues with him and his mother, like potentially her not believing him, and it kills me that the show did nothing with that either. Like there was no attempt really at a conversation between them. I remember she didn't pick up the call from him at one point, and that's it.
Well, yeah, and also at one point she was questioning that whether or not she had given birth to a monster.
Yep.
And but again, things that you see as weakness, I actually think are really great.
No, it would have been great if they had explored that. I don't think just saying a sentence is great. Like tell me more. Show your work here. Tell me what you mean about this. Give me character work. Don't give me that and then cut to eczema.
I think there is a great moment where he accuses her of not believing him.
Yes, at the very end.
Yeah, right, at the very end. And then she says, I never doubted. And it's kind of speaks to the lies we need to tell each other in order to keep surviving as a family unit when someone's accused of something horrible. Let me ask you this question. Did you understand what was going on in the shop at the end when he like eyes that kid?
That's
who
his
walks
friend.
in?
That's his friend who dumped him, basically. If his friend had picked him up that night,
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, I forgot.
none of this would have happened.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much guilt that also another interesting facet to explore that you will not see in the night of.
Indeed. So any other thoughts on the season finale?
I mean, it seemed pretty straightforward. The cat story, the fact that we went back to the eczema, I think the best thing about the finale for me was the cat came back, or at least he got the cat back. And something I noticed, and this is just like a little technical thing, but I think HBO has finally fixed their streaming technology. So that's I don't know if you remember this, Dave, but during the Game of Thrones streaming, it was not good. It was not great for dark scenes, and right now it's almost pristine. So good job, HBO.
Yeah, they did a good job. There seemed to be no problems with the streaming on my end. So
yeah, not just problems. It's more like artifacting, like black levels when you do video like that. They tend to suffer. So that's nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, those are our thoughts on the night of. And I'm looking here. I'm gonna make a little mark here in the show notes. But yeah, if anyone wants to call and share their thoughts, feel free to do that. I don't know if anyone's even attempted it yet. I don't see anyone popping up. I don't see anyone popping up. Like I should see them.
If you're in the chat room and you have thoughts, please call.
Yeah, please call and let us know.
So I think in a normal show, right, they would kind of line up calls, so we wouldn't be awkwardly begging people to pay attention.
Here we go. Okay, here we go. All right, we have our first caller here. Caller, you're on the air with Dave and Devindra. What's your name and where are you from?
Hi, I'm Audrey from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Hi, Audrey from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. What did you think of the season finale of The Night of?
I thought it was okay. I was definitely sort of disappointed in some of like the unrealistic things that were going on. I know you guys kind of discussed them, but I actually had a question for you guys about the book that Freddie gave Nas as he was leaving prison. And if you think there's sort of any significance to that in Nas's future outside of prison. So
the book that Freddie gives Nas at the end is Jack London's Call the Wild, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So, any significance that you think from this book, Devindra? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm not too familiar with the book either, but the show, like many things, was very clear about what the book meant to symbolize early on. Yeah, I don't know what it means about him giving it to him. It's like, oh, I guess you're going to need this in the real world now, because the real world is your new prison.
yeah. The wild is the real world now. I don't. It might have been more complex than that. I don't know that I would give the show that much credit given everything that's happened until this point. So, did you have any thoughts, Audrey?
Well, I guess I was sort of wondering because it seemed like, Freddie still has a fair amount of connection to the world outside of prison. So I had sort of this idea that maybe through that he was sending messages to Nas about his intention to continue his relationship with Nas outside of prison, and maybe which would continue Nas's sort of criminality after he left prison. But it could be sort of extending that a little too far.
I don't know that it is. I actually assume that it would continue as well. So, and at the end when he's kind of doing a drug buy, I actually thought that that's what that was, but it turns out he was just buying drugs for himself. So
because his life is ruined now. Yeah, it's great.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But I think it's a good thought. So did you like the show? Would you recommend the show overall, Audrey?
I think I enjoyed it. It sort of disappointed me towards the second half. I think like you guys have said. But overall, it was definitely, I think, worth a watch.
All right, Audrey. Well, thanks for calling in. Thanks for listening to Slash Filmcast. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. You can keep calling in right now at 781-583-1993. And yeah, the Freddy stuff, overall, all of it I thought felt pretty heavy-handed.
Yeah.
So
that's how records work. Prisoners have free reign to have whatever the hell they want.
They can get tattoos in prison. They can watch TV, do drugs.
Get an LCD TV, do drugs. Yeah.
I thought it was a
they
bit.
can have sex with the prison guards. Dave.
I thought it was a bit odd. I mean, to be fair, I'm sure elements of all those things
some of that
actually happen in real
happens.
life, but I
his
don't know that they all
control over
happen
it,
simultaneously all the time.
Yes.
I think that one of the things that I thought was odd was the Nas like making out with his lawyer, that tape, and no one asking where did that come from.
Yep.
Like what?
Yep.
I mean, Jon Stone I think just assumed that it came from Detective Box, but it came from Freddy. Like, do you think Freddy was trying to force a mistrial and keep Nas in prison longer?
No, I think that was Freddy's goal. But where did it come from originally? Why was a guard just looking at it, right? And
like how did they know about it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Unless maybe Freddy could have asked him to like make sure there's a security camera on their sessions or something. But why record that and not the like the worst drug charge? And maybe that's because Freddy wanted to help him. That could be something.
Indeed. We got another caller at 781-583-1993. You're on the air with David and Devindra. Who is this and where you're from?
Hey, David and Devindra. This is Michael. I'm just down the road from Audrey. I'm in Durham, North Carolina.
Oh, nice. So, Michael, what did you think of the night of season finale?
I looked at the finale. I thought it wrapped up things in a really interesting way. You guys mentioned this on the Flash Filmcast a few weeks ago, that there were a lot of situations where the finale could come off as really disappointing, and I think they were able to get around those. Like, it wasn't something where it's just like her stepdad who did it. So I think they were able to make a satisfying ending, but the thing that I wanted to bring up was, I want to get your guys' opinions on if you think that like some of the messiness in the middle was a result of the fact that it was only 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So things felt a little rushed. At least that's how I felt. Like maybe if they fleshed out some of the characters more, the endings would be more rewarding. So it was like, what if, that show had a longer length? Maybe not like the length of an Oz or The Wire, but definitely, maybe like 2-3 more episodes.
Yeah,
Just
like a
flesh
12
out some of
episode
those
season
ideas.
or something. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, my take on it is that I think it's less a concern about length and more a concern with how they used the length that they had.
Yes.
That as we discussed, like I think they focused on the wrong things and too much on the eczema and not enough on the characters, like you said, and so it ended up feeling very rushed, even though I don't think it had to be. I think they just. There's a saying in filmmaking, you have to kill your darlings, and someone's darling was John Turturro's foot eczema, and they could not kill it. They just love that idea so much. I feel like that took a lot away from it, and then like these fantastical elements from the prison, I thought, also made it so that they couldn't focus on the important characters.
It really focused a lot, like not just the eczema, but the John Turturro sex life. Like we had several scenes kind of around that, maybe more than we needed. I understand he's a human being and dealing with these issues, but yeah, if some of that were cut in exchange for more about Nas, more about the police work in the case, or more about his family, like to me, those are the essential elements of this show.
All right, well, thanks so much for calling in. We appreciate it. All right, one last caller we have time for. Hi, you're on the air with David and Devindra. Who is this and where are you from?
Hello, gentlemen. It's Justin, and I'm here in Vancouver, BC. And I was scrolling past Twitter and saw you guys were doing this, so here we are.
Okay, thanks for calling in, Justin. So what'd you think of the night of season finale?
Steaming pile of garbage, maybe a dumpster fire. I don't know.
That is pretty.
This is what I want your.
That is pretty harsh, Justin.
Yeah,
pretty harsh.
I agree. So that's why I want your guys' take. I need you to talk me off the ledge here. So does it feel to you guys at all like HBO is using really strong starts to really interesting crime procedurals as a vessel for something completely different than that loses a large amount of interest and steam along the way?
I think you're also referring to like True Detective, if I'm detecting your inflection correctly.
Yeah. Is that obvious? Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, I that's basically where I'm heading with it, and that's what it felt like with this entire season. It felt like it started off so strong. I mean, at work we now have a specific cat emoji in Slack. We have Slack channels talking about night of amongst coworkers, and that has all trailed off aggressively as time went on because it just feels like they sucked you in with a great procedural and turned it into a vessel for teaching you something about society and whatnot.
I mean, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive, right? I think The Wire did a good job of balancing those things. Like, I'm not an anti SJW, warrior or something, right? Like, I am all for social messages, especially in our fiction. But what was the social message of True Detective season 2? I guess. Also, industry is bad. It's just, to me, the big problem feels like weak writing in both accounts. True Detective season 2, they admitted that Pizzolatto basically didn't have enough time to really craft that show. They've been working on this show since like 2012, so I don't know what the excuse is here.
Again, I think both of you are being a little bit harsh. I think the show is a mixed bag. It does some things really well. It doesn't do other things well. And it succumbs too much to the temptation to invoke, procedural genre stereotypes.
But would you recommend the show, Dave? Because at this point, I wouldn't recommend it to people. I'd recommend them other shows I think were more... that were better, things that people haven't seen. A lot of people haven't seen Oz.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't.
Yeah, and if someone came along and said, "Give me a really good procedural," it feels like something like The Wire has everything you're looking for. It has really interesting stories. It also is telling a message. It seems like this was trying to do both, and kind of like True Detective for many. I love True Detective season 1, but for many, it really rubbed them the wrong way because the procedural side fell off.
It even has a better kind of weird, atypical criminal role for Michael K. Williams. The Wire has everything. So I agree. If you haven't seen The Wire, watch The Wire. But if you have seen The Wire, then I think you could do a lot worse than The Night of. Anyway, Justin, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts, and thanks for listening to the Slash Filmcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, have a good night, guys. Take care.
Thanks. We have one last listener that's a really, really special listener that I would like to hear this person's thoughts on The Night of.
Hello.
Jeff Cannata, you're on the air live with us right now.
On the air live?
We're live, and the reason you weren't joining us for this is because you were out tonight, and you got home late, and you had to start The Night of like 45 minutes after we started watching the show.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Yep. I'm really, really pleased to be here, guys.
We've just taken a bunch of callers at 781-583-1993, and you were the last one. So, real quickly, even though we spent the last 45 minutes talking about it, what did you think of The Night of?
I really liked it. I'm very curious as to what you guys think of it, because I don't think we've talked at length about it. But it did have its ins and outs and ups and downs, and I think it started really, really strong and then kind of waned a little bit. But I thought it finished strong, and it basically became something I didn't think it started as. I think it started with much more promise than what it ultimately was, which is basically a mystery. It's a mystery, like a mystery novel, a whodunit. And I loved the ambiguity of the ending, and how basically it's just this process wreaks havoc with everyone and is a flawed process, a flawed system. And I liked that we had, a whole bunch of people that could have done it, and we don't exactly know who it was. And I really enjoyed all the characters. I loved how the show was shot. I enjoyed the ride. I think the first 2 episodes really were the high point. Yeah, but I thought it finished strong.
You really think that it's ambiguous who killed the girl at the end?
I mean, I think it makes a clear case for
the accountant. Right,
yes. The one guy with clear motivation and access, and yeah.
But I liked. I mean, I think there is still some doubt about that. And I think there is still a bit of doubt that even Naz could have done it. I think that there is still some some room to interpret the show in several ways. I think, ultimately the fact that the prosecuting attorney says, "Let's go get this guy," and then we see Box on the case. I think we're led to believe that he is the culprit, but I like that the show didn't really answer it definitively.
Honestly, the thing is, Jeff, what you're presenting, I actually would have liked that if the show didn't give us this clear other victim, or at least brought him in and didn't make it gave us enough evidence, I think, to make us think this dude really, like there's a good chance he did it. If it were less clear about that and we're a little more open to like Nas potentially doing it, like if that was the setup of the entire ending and the middle supported that more, that would be far more interesting, maybe.
My biggest complaint actually is that the turning point was this crisis of conscience from the prosecutor. I don't really buy that. Like literally she's giving her closing arguments and just can't bring herself to do it.
Yeah, I did not buy that at all. And
Yeah.
nor did I buy, and we talked about this earlier on the podcast, nor did I buy the idea that John Turturro's closing argument was so good that it caused 6 jurors to think that he was not guilty. I mean, she completely obliterated him on the stand. You know, like that is a brutal cross-examination that she delivered, and there's just no way I can imagine anyone coming back from that.
I didn't interpret it as John Turturro saving the day with his wonderful oration. I interpret it as, you know, there's legit other people that could have done it, and there was legit, and all he did was remind them that, you know, you have the presumption of innocence and you have to, you know, prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think the case was, had enough doubt in it. I didn't interpret it as like they would have lost if it weren't for Turturro. Turturro's amazing, you know.
Well, in that case, then I don't buy any of it. Then, like, I just didn't feel like they made a strong enough case. I mean, his freaking DNA is everywhere, man. Anyway,
I agree, but I also didn't buy what she intended to accomplish by putting him on the stand at all. Are we supposed to believe that she's just so rose-colored glasses on him?
You mean the other attorney, Chandra, right?
Yeah, that she is so sort of taken with him as a person that she's blind to the fact that it accomplishes nothing. Like we're supposed to think that what she sees in him is an innocent man, and so she just wants to present him to the jury because her line of questioning added nothing.
Guys, I don't. This might be a controversial statement, but I have a feeling Chandra is not the best lawyer. I'm just going to put that. I'm going to go on a limb, put that out there that maybe she's not.
There may be that, but Jeff, what did you think of that little their little love story? Because I think that was the point where I was like, nope, show, you are too dumb for me right now.
Yep.
And her procuring drugs for him.
Yeah.
It's like, really, we're going this far down the. Yeah, that was a little bit over the top, and the show did dip at moments into that, and I think it didn't do itself any favors that way, and sort of dipping into melodrama a bit, and these kind of big, dramatic turns, and instead of sticking to what I think how it started, which was a really grounded, really realistic. But even in those first 2 episodes, I was shouting at my television about how stupid he was.
Yes, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of really stupid things. Like, she, as his lawyer, did some really stupid things. And, there's a lot of people in the show that do some really stupid things.
I just wish it was written more like people, like normal humans making human errors that happen to be stupid and not just like grossly negligent narrative errors, like that to me is the bigger problem. One thing we didn't talk about, like, do you guys have I actually think it would be more interesting if we heard more from the jury too, like if we got a look at that process, because you look at the People versus OJ Simpson, we got one good episode with the jury in that show, and that was incredible. But also everything was incredible in that show. But I do kind of miss out not having that perspective.
Agreed.
Either.
Like it would have been great to have. There's so many things, and I made this point earlier, Jeff, that like you can focus, 30, 45 minutes on eczema if everything else in the show is firing on all cylinders. And it wasn't and they could have used eczema time for jury time. They could have used eczema time for detective box time, and they didn't. And that's a huge disappointment. So I agree that was a huge missing piece of the puzzle in a show that did a lot of things really well. So
yeah, and very frustrating to see Naz's journey in prison.
Yeah,
and you're really gonna tattoo sin on your hand and then
go into bad, Jeff. Sin bad. That's
and then go into I said to my wife as his cross-examination started, I was like, her first question is, show me your hand real quick.
Well, Devindra, I saw you get in a little tiff with Matt Patches on Twitter about this.
It was a friendly tiff, but
but his point was, if you went into prison, you would be a changed person too. You know,
This is true.
so
But I would think I would be smart enough to realize if I'm on trial and I think I'm innocent,
Yes.
not to get the fucking crown tattoo on my neck.
Everything Nas did in prison, like even if we can say, oh man, being a Rikers will change you as a person after a couple months, like the core idea is like, I am an innocent person. I do not need to be here. I need to do everything in my power. I can understand doing everything to like survive the prison, but I need to do everything in my power to get the fuck out of here. And yeah, he the tattoos on his hands, on his neck, shaving his head, everything, like none of that helped.
time makes fools of us all, Jeff Cannata.
Sure.
Time makes fools of us all. Anyway, well, those are our thoughts on the night of. Thanks so much for people for calling in at 781-583-1993. That was super fun, and we're planning on doing more of these kind of live call-ins in the future and hearing your thoughts on major television events. So appreciate it. You can always write into us at /filmcast@gmail.com or find more episodes of the show at /filmcast.com. And thanks for listening. We're going to be recording the regular episode right after this, so you will be able to hear that later this week as well. This has been the /Filmcast, the official podcast of /film.com, and our review of The Night Of.